Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we get episode 213 today.
Hello, Los Angeles.
Is it Los Angeles? All right.
Yeah, LA is 213.
It's kind of funny how New York's 212 and LA is 213. So you wonder if they just that's how it happened in order, or if there's an evil plot behind this.
No, it actually came out in the late 40s. The original area code, as more parts of the country got direct dial and long distance it used to be you had to do it through an operator. Number, please. I'm sure it was just 212 was just easier because it was a 1 and 3 markets. I forget what Chicago. I think we've done Chicago already, haven't we?
I forget now.
Chicago's 312.
Oh, so we got a ways to go.
So Chicago's going to have to be patient and wait a couple of years, but both the coasts.
Yeah, we got them covered, and Maine,
and Idaho. We've done 2 potato shows already.
That's right. Hey, ways to get a hold of us.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Ways to get a hold of us. Digitaltodice.com is the website. Digitaltodice.com. 978-751-DICE is the text line. Digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. Over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Come over there and join the discussion. And if you like to support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/digitaltodice. And we have some new Patreons this week, and I think they've joined us on the Discord, and we have our Discord server for our Patreons over there that are a part of the club members, the $5 members.
Yes.
And we have some really, really good discussions over there on Discord. It's fun to go over there and check that out. So that's all the ways to get a hold of us. Now, in episode 213, Ron, what are we going to talk about today?
I'm going to talk about Jen Henson, who was one of the masterminds behind the Sports Sim magazine, was St. Patrick's publication, which just came out with their latest, it's the January issue, but it's February, asked people who subscribe to their Facebook group, what is their number one sport on the tabletop? And you would think that football would be closing the gap some, but surprisingly enough, it's still 2/3 baseball. And today we're going to kind of go into why baseball, despite not being the number one sport in the country and not for a while, is still number one on the tabletop.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to do that in episode 213. Let me see. Should we get it? What do you want to get into first? What we're playing, or what do you want to do?
We'll do some brief what we're playing.
Okay, here we go with that.
Although there's a lot of people who commented on this topic, so primarily there. First of all, I'd like to apologize to the fans of the Edmonton Oilers.
Uh-oh, why? What happened?
Because I took some of my FanDuel money and put them on the Oilers last night against Vegas. They had a chance to, I think, set the all-time record for longest winning streak in NHL history.
Oh, that's right. They were on a hot streak there.
Yeah, they were until Uncle Ron put some fake money on them. And when I went to check my balance this morning on FanDuel, I realized it hadn't changed. I mean, I didn't, I'm still trying to go through the free roll. I went, they lost to, it was Vegas, so it wasn't like they lost to a scrub team or anything like that. But I'm sorry, Edmonton, that it was because I wanted to profit off your success.
It could have been.
I didn't. I didn't. So let's see. We've had some COVID in the house. Thankfully, I never got it, and thankfully, she had a very mild case of it. The wifey poo did.
Okay.
But I fired up an old. I don't know why. I got in the mood as playing as myself in games, and so fired up a golf tour with me and players from the last 20 years, and played. Finished up one tournament. I forget where the heck that was. Didn't do very well. Did Doral down in Miami. Finished second or finished third. And then did Arnie's tournament down in Bay Hill, which is a gorgeous course. I really think it deserves more attention than that. And I had a bad last round. So did that. And then remember when we talked a couple times on the show after Dave Cook's Sabre presentation, and I think the new one is like the 27th of February, about putting yourself into the game. I mean, I think we've done an entire show on it, haven't we? So you could do that in a game, and so I did that with the basketball game. Basketball is not my favorite sport, and I just wanted to sit there and go, let's see if it makes it more interesting to do. So I did myself like the 59-60 New York Knicks. And that was kind of fun. And then you and I were talking about that and said, don't do it for a great team. Don't do it for a Celtics. And so I pulled a Gardner.
Okay.
And I looked at the expansion Miami Heat, 88, 89. So I'm much more familiar with that era because I was that age. So I made myself, I just wrote my name over someone else. So there's some poor scrub for the Heat that rookie year could be insulted. So I put my name in, bumped up the stats a little bit, and they opened up their first ever game was against the Los Angeles Clippers. Mm-hmm. You would know them as the old Buffalo Braves.
Oh, wow.
So they're playing the Clippers, and first game in franchise history, they score 46 in the first quarter. Okay?
Oh, wow.
They're up on the Clippers by 25. It's Rory Sparrow is the point guard. He was a good player, role player for the Knicks in the mid '80s, and the other name you might, well, maybe not you, but people would know would be Ronnie Cycli, who was a pretty good center in college at Syracuse when they had that run in the late '80s. He never was as good in the pros as he was in college, but okay. So it wasn't the world's worst team, but they weren't going to be competing with the Jordans and the Birds and the Magics of the era. So it's a 25-point lead in the first quarter. And by the fourth quarter, the lead is gone. All gone. Typical expansion thing. In fact, I think we get down as much as 8, and we storm back. Now, again, I'm trying not to make myself a superstar. When I looked at the game afterwards, I think it's like 19 points and 7 boards, and I'm a poor class Larry Bird. Okay. Because that was my favorite player growing up. So I can pass, I can rebound, I can kind of shoot, but I don't want to be a superstar. We're down 1. We climb the mountain back. We start going back and forth. It's like 134 to 133. Typical 80s offense and all that. And so Clippers have the ball. There's 12 seconds to go. Again, you don't in Action PC, you don't have that much control. So I've got a strategy comes up, and you can select it the last 2 minutes. Steal or foul. I need to foul. They can run off the clock. Go to the line, beat me that way. Benoit Benjamin. I mean, we're not talking about the Clippers of a high. These aren't the dubsteps of the 2020s. Okay, so we're down by 1. We need to foul, and instead, I get the steal. My second ever NBA steal.
Nice.
We run the break. I get the ball on the break. I slam it home for a walk-off win. I score 37.
Nice.
It's like, whoa.
That's
like
fun.
That would never happen. But yes.
I think you can create yourself in quite a few of the games we play, right?
You can. I think OOTP, obviously, I've done that. All the Cook games. You could theoretically do it in Strat Baseball because you can make a fringe card.
Okay.
In that. You could certainly do it in 2nd and 10. Make yourself any position that you want. Give yourself that. Again, it's not going to be realistic because you're going to make yourself good. But, it was kind of a fun way to pass a week of not feeling all that great. And again, I think it just kind of, we have these games. Why not make them a little more interesting?
I'm thinking about when I was on the Strat website this week, I saw that you can create a custom card for yourself.
Yes, you can.
And it was only like $10. And I was like,
it's great.
And I was like, something, I think I might do that. Make one for me, one for you. And I don't know what team will go on, but what I'll do is I'll just mock somebody's stats. You know what I mean? Like I'll go to the website and figure out which play I want to mimic myself as, and I'll just put in all those stats. So I'll just be a copy of somebody, and I'll do the same for you, and I'll have the cards there. And I think I might be able to do that in APA too with the Steve's card. Was it the Steve's baseball card?
Steve's card clip. Yeah.
So I might do something like that. Yeah, and it wouldn't be official or anything, but it'd still be kind of fun to do. And
I know of guys have done that with their softball.
Oh yeah,
whatever. Yep. Or if they know someone, or maybe their kid's little league.
Yeah.
That it's something that's going to be outrageous. Oh yeah, you hit 475 with 38 homers and 39 RBIs. There you go. That's cool. I mean, again, it wouldn't be a serious project or anything like that. But yeah, no, there is something kind of fun about playing as yourself. We did the show with that, and of course, every once in a while in hockey, I'll play a team that has Dave Gardner on it, who really was an NHL player, and
Right.
and that's just there's no Juckets that ever played in any of the four sports, so I can't really recreate my cousin Claude or anything like that, But you can.
I got lucky when I was playing all the old Xbox games back in the day and PlayStation games. Whoever did the narration had a whole bunch of first and last names that they read off. So when you picked a guy, you could go in and have the name that they were going to read. So luckily there was a Gardner on the Ottawa Senators. So anytime I put myself in the game, obviously Dave's an easy name, and so I would have Gardner in there. It wouldn't be my pronunciation, but it was close enough. But there were some people I knew that, like the Juckets, that had nothing even close. So they'd have to be, I don't know what they'd even use for that, but maybe they just chose a funny name like, Skater or something. But it's always fun to kind of create yourself and do that. So yeah, good times.
Absolutely.
Let me see. So what have I been doing?
What have you been playing?
I've been playing a lot of WHA stuff. I playing a little bit on Action PC. I think I told everybody I put Bobby Orr on the Philadelphia Blazers with Derek Sanderson and Johnny McKenzie and Bernie Parent, and so I'm having him play on that team in Franchise Hockey Manager and Action PC. And I've only played a few games of each. They're not doing as well as I thought with Bobby Orr on the team. They're just a very average team still with all that firepower on it. I started on Stone Cold PC the 73-74 season, and I just started picking random games and playing that on the computer, and I was streaming a few of those games. That's been really fun. Playing a little bit more APA baseball with my 78 Red Sox and things like that. And, I also picked up the rest of the WHA seasons for Action PC Hockey. I think I had 70, the first year, 72, 73, then the last year, 78. And so I picked up the 4 remaining seasons in the middle. One of them was even free, by the way. They were
nice.
Yeah, they were giving it away. So I picked up the 4 seasons.
Oh, for the All-Stars weekend special?
Yeah, they had the weekend special for the All-Star game. I think I picked up those 4 seasons. It was $20 for all 4 of them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So they were on a sale, and one of them was free. So I was like, oh, thank you very much. That was kind of neat. So I rounded out my WHA with that. And let me see. I'm getting the itch to play some APA hockey and some Hockey Bones again. I got a big showcase coming up this weekend, so I don't know how I'm going to play. Did you get some new
cards? I saw that you posted some for
I ordered
Winnipeg goalie that 10 goals against average.
Yeah, well, I ordered 80-81 for APA. That's one of the seasons I didn't have, and I hadn't ordered APA season in quite some time now. So I was itching. And I was like, I'm working all these crazy hours. I want to, kind of get something fun. So I ordered 80-81 for hockey from APA. And I started researching the season. And I did a video on it last night on YouTube about how I look at seasons and what I look for when I'm going to do a replay. Or, things in the season that would get me excited to buy the season. And there were so many fun things in that season, including the Winnipeg Jets, who only won 9 games, which is...
I didn't realize that there was a team that was that bad. That wasn't an expansion team.
I didn't realize that either. Now, technically, they kind of were because they come over from the WHA, but this was their second season. They had won 19 to 20 games in that first season, which was, 79, 80, or whatever it was. The Washington Capitals in 74, 75, which I think is the worst team to date, won 8 games, and the Jets won 9. I didn't realize it was that bad. And
that's bad.
3 of the games they lost 10 to something. Okay, so as I'm researching the season, and I went to the team, I found that there was one guy, and I got his card right here. His name is Ron Lustel, and they threw him in late March in a game against the Canucks, and they lost, 10-4 or 10-7. He gave up 10 goals. The only game in the NHL he ever played, he gave up 10 goals, and they left him in for the whole game. Again, this team had won 9 games all year, so at this point, I can imagine the lineup they had in late March. It was probably all these young kids that wanted to try him out, and then this poor guy went in and it got shelled. So he's not carded in APA, but he is carded in Hockey Bones, and I do have the 80-81 season with Hockey Bones.
Nuts.
So that will make the table. I'm hoping in the next week or two, and I'm going to play that Winnipeg Vancouver game with Ron Lutzel in net. And I looked at his card here, and I'm looking at it right now. You can't see it on the podcast. But there's 66 possible options on the card, okay? Because it's a 6 roll, and then it's a 2 to 12 roll. So there's 66 options here, 11 times 6. I think when I went through this card, I counted 10 saves.
Oh.
I think I counted 7 or 8 rebounds, 6, 7, or 8 rebounds. So on the card of the 66 possible outcomes, there's only about 16 saves. That means there's 50 out of 66 chances the puck's going to go in on this guy. So anytime it's in range, it's almost going to be a goal. And so that's going to make the channel at some point in Hockey Bones.
You think our friend Randy can go find and interview that person?
Oh, man. But, like somebody said, hey, he played in the NHL and I didn't.
He played in the NHL. And no matter what it was, he played in the NHL, so good for him. But so that was kind of funny. So I'll be playing some Hockey Bones on the channel. But that's all I've really been playing. Yeah, you've been busy too.
I've been busy. I got a busy weekend here. I try to slip in something every once in a while. Try to play a little bit of something, either on the computer or whatever. But so that's kind of what I've been doing there.
All right. Well, we should probably get to the topic at hand.
All right, here we go. All righty.
So before we get going on this, whether baseball still being overwhelmingly the number one sport you play on the tabletop, I'll ask you: are you surprised by that, or no?
Oh, absolutely not. No, and I'll say. Well, I guess I'll save it for when we get into talking about it.
Because we're going to be talking, because a lot of the things that came up we'll get through with the...
I kind of have my reasons why, and we've talked a little bit about them before, but there's a few other reasons that have come to mind since we've had that discussion. But I'm not surprised that baseball is the number one by far.
All right, well, we're going to start with this because this was Jen Henson's question on the Sports Sims group, and I believe she posted it a couple other places. So we'll start with S.T. Patrick's response, and we'll edit this some. Jen and I were just talking about the poll when she saw your question. I can't say I was surprised at the results. I actually think that its margin is slowly shrinking, which I agree. If you ask cards and dice players in 1999 or 2000, which, by the way, was a quarter century ago, can you believe that?
Right.
What they played most, I think baseball would have gotten 90% of the vote. The fact that football, hockey, and basketball pulled it over 4% to him is an uptick in non-baseball play. Also seeing more gamers who spread their sports over time. There are now so many gamers who play golf, auto racing, wrestling, soccer, boxing, horse racing, etc. And I think you are, Mr. Gardner, responsible for a lot more people, I think, trying hockey just because of who you are. There's one thing that he's rhetorically curious about when it comes to baseball. I hear a lot of comments that it's shorter, faster than basketball or football, and that may be true. But I think learning a cards and dice baseball game takes much more time than basketball and football. The rule books also seem twice as long and much more detailed. Every game is sort of obligated to have a complex base running system that takes into account multiple ratings, pitchers hold, runners steal, and so on and so forth. And I'll just go to the last paragraph here. When Matt and Craig released Pocket Pennant Run 1, I thought, this is genius. This is exactly the game I would have cherished when I was 11 years old, playing hundreds of made-up dice baseball games with my friends. This would be this would have been amazing. New tongue, first day, Dave. But I knew it wouldn't be long until people wanted other stuff, and they did. The game's simplicity was its genius. I said then that I wish every Little League coach in the country could buy a copy of PPR for every kid on their team. They would love it, and sports sim gaming would have a new generation of fans. And so I didn't read a lot of that. I'm not going to answer that directly because I think there's a lot of comments. I posted this on Jen's group and Jem and S.C. Patrick's group, our own group, and on Sports Sims and Replays.
Okay.
And so as I got up, I don't think complexity of baseball games wasn't anything that I was actually thought of.
No, I wouldn't put that. I mean, obviously there are some that are complex to play, but no, I wouldn't put that in on the table as far as something I would consider a baseball game to be tough to play.
All right. So we'll start with the people who responded at Sports Sim Magazine.
Okay.
Scott Boulderson, or Scott says, I tend to think that the ease of not having to remember timing rules helps. I know that when I first got into playing Pay Dirt, my friend and I would constantly forget to change the clock after each play, which made us have to go back and forth and figure out how much time actually went by. I think that's especially tough in basketball, and I don't know if I found a way to play that fully satisfies me, willing to look at games at their recommendations and some of the other ones there. But I think there's just a lot to football.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Scott said. Greg says, the quickest to play along with an older age group that play these games where baseball takes them back to their youth. Kevin, who's been a guest on our show, says, I'm sure that time commitment is one of the factors. I can play 3 to 4 baseball games in the same amount of time that it takes me to play one full play second season football game. Certainly other factors come into play, but that's the first one that popped into my head. And let's start with that, because I think this is going to be pretty much a common thing.
Well, why don't you read the responses, and then we'll go back and talk about them.
All right, Scott. Another Scott says, I'll throw out that baseball has the most stats, and most gamers probably enjoy stats, so they gravitate to baseball. Your friend Dave says it's fast to play and it has a finite number of events to simulate. Flow sports like hockey, soccer, and basketball, and this particular Dave knows a lot about hockey, are hard to replicate in comparison. Football has both many more events to simulate and many more types of events to simulate. Baseball is a sports game with a path of least resistance to enjoyment. Ian says because it's primarily a U.S. audience. I don't think Ian is American. And John says because the majority of game players, baseball was the national game. And those are the responses from on the Sports Sim Magazine page. Thoughts on that?
Well, I'm writing down what they're saying, and I'm gonna go over these. Point by point.
All right, let's do the ones from, if I can find it. Wow, a lot here on the bigger sports sims and replays.
Okay.
Let me get them all up here. Gary says, I think it's the nature of the game. It is basically a series of individual events strung together. Sports that have simultaneous action is harder to replicate, and the necessary mechanics may turn people off of them. And I got 12 legs, by the way. Mark says, baseball has always been an easier game to design and be authentic. Many baseball games are seen as good, authentic games pleasing to consumers. Football does not enjoy this. Football games have a much more difficult time being authentic and capturing a sufficient amount of aspects that need to be presented well in a football game. So football games are not going to be as satisfying to the same number of consumers. But even more significantly than that, I think the type of people that gravitate towards tabletop PC sports sims tend to be, generally speaking, bigger baseball fans than anything else. All right. Mike says quicker. As much as I want to play and stream football, basketball, it's 90 minutes. When you get older and tired, some days it's harder to do that. Mm-hmm. And people agree with him. Gregory says it's essentially a game of individual competitions, which makes it easier to model. Football, basketball, and soccer create much more statistical ambiguity, at least in terms of modeling. And Joe goes with that. Also harder to model individual contributions. Corey says baseball is a game of simplicity, batter versus pitcher. Greg says baseball is a much easier game to recreate because it's hitting, pitching, and fielding for the most part. Other sports, you have a lot more moving parts to get a realistic result. Harder to get into that game. Apple Football Handbook says the most common theme appeared to be the wealth of data for baseball, but it appears more advanced data will be coming for football as well, and is already being used by some designers to some extent. Ron, not me, says ease of play. Kevin says easier and shorter play time. easier to quantify the stats into an accurate game. I would also guess that a great majority of gamers are older and grew up in an era when baseball was America's sport. Steve says a combination of the fact that MLB has the longest history, and that so many of us older, quote unquote, gamers were Little League baseball players first. Tom says easier to play solo. Will says depth of history. Another Tom says a lot of good points. With baseball, you can complete a 3-game series in the time it might take you to complete a basketball or football game. David T. says baseball easily is a game that translates to the cards and dice world with great details while doing it in 30 minutes or less. Chris says age range of the players. The majority tend to be over 30. Baseball was the main draw. I'm not done. We got a lot of responses to this. Tom G says, it is the oldest brand, too. Easiest to replicate in a board game. I started out in baseball, but enjoyed just about all sports that are simulated well. Brian says, and Brian, a game designer, though I agree with the speed of play being a big draw, I think the most important reason is that there's so many interesting things you can do with a baseball game. Because of the stability of the data sets, for example, doing a decent service to a hockey game before 1967 is going to be tough. Mainly because power play data wasn't kept. Basketball before the early 70s, offensive rebounds, block shots, and steals weren't kept by the NBA. In fact, nothing before 73. Rebounds, they weren't an official stat until the mid-50s. You go back to like the early 50s and try to piece that stuff together. You just can't find it. Football, if you want the 1959 season, you better have someone who knows those teams inside and out to rate anyone outside of the skill positions. With baseball, 95% of the stats you need to rate players is available across almost 150 years of the sport. And stats normalization is much easier. How do you normalize, say, Alex Karras with a defensive tackle from the 80s, 90s, or today?
Right.
Baseball also lends itself to the you be the manager aspect. That's what's sold us to App and Strat, right? Mm-hmm. In a football game, if you have Eric Dickerson and Moms Mabley at running back, you're never going to use Moms. But in a baseball sim, you just might take a gamble on sending Al Weiss to the plate in certain situations or because of injuries. Lineup changes are much easier to make. It's just a great game to be a manager and a GM for the tabletop. Mike from the truck says, figured it was baseball. Second would be football. I think football and hockey.
They were tied or pretty close.
They were tied. And Joe says, discrete action that simulates the real sport. Football is a close second. Hockey and basketball are continuous motion sports. Hard to simulate those two. All right. And from our group, I get hazard pay for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Trying to find it all. All right.
Yeah, there's been some good ones here, some really good ones.
John says 158 games per team, depending on the era, times 14 teams is 2,212 games per season. Average baseball game takes the average person about 30 minutes, 66,360 minutes. That is one long-ass Mike Wallace interview, don't you think? Mm-hmm. For a full season, that's 1,106 hours if your math is right. Now let's do football. 16 games per season times 14 teams is 224 games. Let's say the average person takes 2 hours. That's 448 hours. Baseball's always been the favorite of most because we think it's quicker, but not really, unless my math is wrong. And, of course, not everyone replays an entire season.
Okay.
Oh, goodness. We're not going to read all that back and forth there. Joe says statistical nature of the game, ability to move players between teams and maintain the realism compared to other sports, popularity of baseball when the hobby started. Joseph C. says baseball games translate well and are easy to visualize. Most results are self-contained and can be resolved in a single roll. Games are quick to finish. Ryan says we are old guys who like baseball. Also, the binary nature of the pitcher of that all lends itself. James Cast says length of play is a big factor. Ability to accept the abstraction is another. We more easily accept the result-based outcomes of baseball than we do football or basketball. We expect more details to be provided in those sports for every outcome. Mike says you can play a full detailed game in a short amount of time. Baseball really is a battle between pitcher and catcher or batter. It's not complicated, so it's much easier to design a game that gets you accurate results. And the guy who loves Nomar Garcia Parra more than life itself says it's the greatest game ever invented. Paul says ease of playing, can complete a game quickly in the age of the players. Greg says easiest game to create and replicate because it's so simple and it's so stat heavy. Jamie says, I think it's a combination of several things. Baseball has the biggest connection to stats. Certainly numbers tell a story in baseball more so than other sports. Also baseball, in his opinion, is the best or it's best on the radio, and these games more mimic following a radio account of the game, and baseball fills that role best. Michael says, I believe baseball translates the best to the tabletop and or PC with its turn-by-turn, at-bat-by-at-bat pace. It gives the player as much time as they need to strategize, and virtually every detail of the game can be recorded in 30 minutes or less. Just like if you went to Domino's. That's my line, not his. So you'll always finish the game feeling like you didn't miss anything. Much different from other games like hockey and basketball. Hockey's his favorite sport, by the way. Brad says rich statistical base along with the essence of the game boiling down to a series of pitcher versus batter outcomes. Let's see what another Mike says. I won't go with his first point because I think that's pretty much standard. 2, I think basketball and football are not as smooth to play solitaire, and they take much longer. And he's done 80% baseball and other 20% basketball. And he says if you think probably a common thing, if you were to ask Strat, who's the one company that makes all Big Four, you would bet it would be its most consistent with their actual sales numbers, which would explain the reluctance to produce older sets in other sports. Jeffrey says that baseball is as much about storytelling as it is statistics, not just the players, coaches, or managers. Ballparks, they are supporting characters in the story, not just faceless, nameless buildings. And he kind of goes on. And from there, David, who's not from the U.S., the game is played in chunks with clear breaks between at-bats. This is why cricket works so well, too, although not when most people are responding from the U.S. Soccer, ice hockey, basketball, and the like have too much going on all the time, too many moving parts, if you like, hence those sports work best. Scott says baseball sims have been around for a very long time, so there are more of them. Baseball also used to be the sport of choice for a certain generation that populates most of the hobby, and many in the hobby sim multiple sports. And last but not least, I know it's a lot to go through, SJ says, I think it's because it's the easiest to play, has the most choices, and is likely a favorite sport of us more mature folks who like to play.
Okay. I've been taking notes. Here's what I got out of that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of stuff that I thought we would talk about.
There's a lot of
here.
stuff. And thank you all.
Yes, thank you for
responding
the feedback here. All right, so here's what I got here. I decided making a little a checkbox here, okay, with all the different responses here. And by far and large, whatever I'm trying to say,
yes.
The time to play and the ease of play was by far the most popular choice here. So I started making my little checkbox here, and so I'll combine them. Time and ease of play was by far the number one. The number two, and somebody put it great, I think it was David to put it, the finite events.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I hadn't really considered, at least putting it that way. Okay, because now in theory, there's hundreds of things that can happen with every pitch. Okay, in theory, but let's face it, when you're playing a baseball game on your table or on the computer, it's the pitch comes in and it's a hit or an out. If there's runners on base, it does get a little bit more complex. But for the most part, you're gonna get one of maybe 10 different things to happen. It's going to be an out, or it's going to be a strikeout or a walk, or the batter's going to get on base, or maybe there's an error, or maybe somebody scores on a throw, or somebody gets an extra base. But the complexity of baseball, when you go back and read about all the different things that can happen, those are so rare for some of those things to actually happen. When you see the throw to first, it's screwed up, and then the throw to third is bad, and the guy comes home, and then there's 2 runners in the base pass. I get that it can get really kind of crazy, but for the most part, that doesn't happen in our games.
You don't get plays called back from flags. You don't have to sit there and shoot endless free throws at the end of a game.
Yeah, there's no redos. It's
right, and so I think if
the finite events was fantastically put.
I think if Van Beek and Seitz, who took Van Beek's national pastime and made APA out of that, if either one of those had done that as a pitch-by-pitch game, I'm not quite sure the game would have taken off.
Right.
Because that's the one thing I think that slows down baseball as a real-life sport is, look, we can condense this down, but if you sat there and had to roll for every pitch, I'm not sure how many people would be playing.
That was actually, whoever come up with the fact that we're just going to get the result of the at-bat, that was actually quite genius to do that.
Yes.
Because if you do try to play a pitch-by-pitch game, and I've tried it a couple times in an OTP and even Baseball Mogul, and it's fun to a couple of batters that way. And even Action PC, I think I tried it once or twice. But ultimately, after a batter or two, you're like, okay, I need to move this along. You know, and so you go back to the at-bat or the, whatever it is you're doing. But the idea of, the finite events, that was
That's huge.
That was number 2 behind the time and the ease of play. It really was. And so, that's, like I say, it's batter pitcher for the most part. If you factor in runners, when they're on base, it can get a little bit more complex. But for the most part, it's a pretty simplistic, way to play. Up next is one that I was kind of thinking of is that, football may be the most popular sport in the United States today. When you get all the betting now and the FanDuel and the sports bet or whatever it is, and the playoffs, and you got the Super Bowl coming up, and Sundays are for getting around the TV and watching with everybody. But our age group, okay, and older, okay, we're on the younger side of this group, grew up with baseball. We didn't grow up with Sundays. Let's get together for a big bash on Sundays. Yeah, I mean, you'd watch football on Sundays or whatever, but it wasn't what it was today. Baseball was by far the biggest sport and was for the longest time, and I'm not sure when that changed.
See, I'm gonna disagree with that. You're leading to that point.
But that was the number 3 on that list. Is that we grew up with baseball. And not football as the most popular sport. So that was number 3 on the list.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I think football overtook baseball's popularity in the late 60s. And the most watched World Series was 1980. And then the most watched Super Bowl was the next year, 81 or 82. My dad wasn't a baseball fan. When we started out as a family together, I mean, he was a huge football fan. We would get together and watch football. Sundays were for football. My grandfather was not a huge baseball fan. He hated Joe Namath. Uncle that was a huge baseball fan. I was a baseball fan. It became a baseball household because of me, not because of the male influences that I had in my life. And going to school, I mean, World Series time, especially when the Mets were good, that was there. But clearly, football was the bigger deal, or was maybe equal with baseball. Again, so I'm early 50s.
I'm starting to wonder, depending on where you're located, what that would be. Because here in the Boston area, like opening day Red Sox, that was like a 3-month event. Leading up to opening day, that's all you talked about. If the Bruins were in the Stanley Cup Finals, you were still talking Red Sox preseason baseball on the radio. That's just how baseball was. And the Patriots, maybe because they were just a very average to above average team back when I grew up. There was no excitement about the Patriots. They weren't even selling out games, for crying out loud. And when I grew up, baseball cards was all the rage, and still baseball cards are worth a lot more than football cards. Football cards are worth nothing. Maybe if you have a extremely rare whatever, Montana or Marino, but growing up, no one collected football cards. It was all baseball cards. And so for me, and someone else made a point about being on the radio. Like, we all listen to baseball games on the radio as a kid.
It is a radio sport. It is a passive sport.
So the thing about it is that, at some point, football is over past it, and I'm not sure where that overlap came, and baseball's not what it was compared to when we were younger. But, like I said, I just think back to the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s. It was all about baseball and opening day, and the World Series was a huge thing. And football, it was there, but it just wasn't the spectacle. Now it is. Now it is a spectacle, and it's the biggest business going on right now. But I think the age group of us, and especially older than us, I think we grew up on baseball, watching baseball, playing baseball. That was the other thing, is anybody could grab a bat and a glove and get on and play baseball. And football, we played a couple games of tag football, stuff like that, but we never played any serious football. Baseball, everybody in town played baseball. The amount of kids that played football was small. So that's kind of how I look at that, is that I think that, again, that's third on the list here after timing and ease of play in the finite events of the game, was that the age group grew up with baseball, and when we go back to play, that's what we're going back to play, is baseball.
Right.
So that was third on the list.
Okay.
Fourth on the list, and again, these are pretty close. The top four were pretty close, was the amount of stats available for baseball. And how far back it goes.
Forever.
Again, try to go back and find some old football or hockey stats or basketball stats. You're not going to do it.
Well, football sacks weren't even official until 1982, and that was a strike year. So the first full year of official stats for sacks, don't say that 5 times fast, was 1983, which for a lot of us is either right in our wheelhouse or at the edge of people's wheelhouses. There's researchers who've gone back, I think, as far as 68 and done them from 68 to 80 or whatever.
They've gone back and done that, But baseball, by far, just the stats available for baseball is
oh my
insane.
Goodness.
JT Hetrick there, writing that book about the Spiders. You think he's going to write a book about the 1920 New York Rangers? Ain't going to happen. There's just nothing there for that, So that was the other thing that was brought up here. One that was kind of interesting was the easy design of the game. That was brought up by a handful of people as well. Is that the game is easy to design because it's a batter-pitcher interaction. So that was the other thing that was brought up. Then there's a handful of other things here that kind of just got a couple of mentions. One of them was there's way more baseball games than anything else, so maybe that's why they're more popular.
Birdie Straub's count is what, 95, 96, 97?
It's getting up there, that will probably get to 100 before the end of this year, I would imagine, as people come up with their own games. And so, that's the other thing, is that, and that's the funny thing is that, there's so many people playing. It's like some people's favorite games are App, some people like Strat, some people like Status Pro. I can get on the list. Those are the older ones. And you got the newer ones like Payoff Pitch and Season Ticket and Pocket Pennant Run. And, there's just so many games. We could list off 95 of them. And everyone's got their favorite. And, and they're all different. So there's definitely more of them. One of the other interesting things that somebody brought up was the continuous motion of the other games. And baseball doesn't have that. It's a batter, here's the pitch, and you got 5 or 10 or maybe as many as 15 seconds that happen on a play, and then that's it. So, whereas, basketball and hockey are continuous motion. The puck and the ball are always in play.
Everyone knows how to keep score in baseball. Fill out a stat sheet for a football game or the others, and so, everyone knows how to, so it's easier to do that. Yeah.
So continuous motion in games, you're trying to get, with football, there's 22 guys in the field. How do you kind of design a game trying to factor in 22 moving parts on the field, And in hockey, the puck's always in motion. It can hit a skate and go the other way. Basketball, you get your steals and you're throwing it out of bounds, and there's 10 people on the court, and then maybe it's a little more structured for basketball because they'll set up and move the ball around, and some guys are kind of standing there. But the continuous motion was something that somebody brought up. A couple of things that only were mentioned once. I think it was the first person that brought up timing in the game. And
yes,
I'm surprised that only got the one mention. I think that was the first comment that you read.
First mention on the Sports Sims magazine. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just that's something that I hadn't. I mean, I considered, but it's just, but that I think is a bigger deal because when you play baseball, again, the timing is the outs. And everybody knows the outs. When you're playing football or hockey or basketball, you're flipping a card, you're rolling dice. You have to manually keep track of the time in the game. And that can be a pain in the neck, too. Because
I know for you that's one of the things that holds you back doing the strat hockey is the power play because the timing is different. Once you run out of fast action cards, the period's over. I mean, that's how you do it. But you timed the super advanced power play in a different way. And once you get to know it, it's not that difficult. But there is a learning curve there. And and again, you start with 21 units. You count down to 0 and you take 3 cards out of the deck, or exactly that. Or how long do I take in the sequence out in basketball? Or exactly.
No, the timing, you don't have to keep track of time in baseball. It's done with outs. And that I think that might be a bigger deal than some of these other ones here because, I mean, I guess that falls into the ease of play of the game because, again, when I'm playing the hockey games, so sometimes I'm subtracting 30 seconds or 40 or 24 or 20, and it becomes a pain. I mean, games like shootout hockey and stone cold hockey handle the power plays fantastic. It's like you get one flip for 1 minute and one flip for the second minute,
right,
and it's nice and easy, and it's a piece of cake, it really is. But yeah, I mean, again, even in basketball, I mean, sometimes it's broken down to 12 seconds or 24 seconds during this segment or whatever. Football, holy cow. I mean, I know some games are like, okay, mark off 30 seconds for every run and 10 seconds for every pass. Well, if you go back to Tom Brady goes back to pass and he throws it in the ground, it's a 3-second play. 3 seconds or 4 seconds tops. You know what I mean? Plays don't usually take that long, even with the clock running sometimes, So
there's different eras. Some years the clock is stopped. Yeah. Some years the clock is running.
So football, I can see, could be just one big bear to design the timing system for football, with that. So I'm surprised timing really only got the one mention.
Yeah, because that is extremely legitimate.
Yeah, I thought that was the best comment there. Of all the ones that I saw here.
Right.
Some of the other ones that were mentioned was the U.S. audience for baseball.
Well, this is an American-centric show.
Mm-hmm.
We're delighted that we have people there. I mean, if we did this in the UK, it'd be, soccer or cricket, football or cricket.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of some of the things that I get out of all the responses there. And it's stuff that, we've talked about before on the show a little bit here and stuff that we were going to talk about here. But, I think we're probably all pretty much in agreement when the majority of people that the big things are the time it takes to play a game. Now, again, like the one guy mentioned, he calculated out if you're going to play a full season, well, that's going to be different. Football is going to be your best way to go. There's far less games. Even at 2 hours a game, you're playing, a fraction of the games you are in baseball and hockey and basketball. So, but that aside, if you wanted to play a World Series, okay, a best-of-7 World Series, or you were going to play a best-of-7 basketball or hockey series, baseball is going to play that in an afternoon. Whereas the hockey and the basketball games are going to take you a while,
I was surprised by, I forget what the specific numbers were in the poll, and you can go back to the Sports Sim Magazine Facebook group where she did that to get the results, that there are a lot of basketball fans in the country. And we all kind of have the ideal of, I think it's the one sport that it really just kind of, there's a 5-year frozen period of time where we think that's the best of that particular sport. That more people don't play basketball. Because if you look at the ratings, just simply looking at who watches the finals on television today, I mean, the NFL just blows everything out of the water. I think of the 50 most watched events on television, not just sports, but on television in the last year, 49 were football games. I mean, that's just the power of the NFL. But if you look at, I mean, the NBA Finals draw a higher rating than the World Series. Again, nothing draws what they did 40 years ago. And then there's baseball, which is right behind it. It's not as bad as people think. And then there's hockey. And I honestly think that more people responded to hockey because of what you've done. You know, I think people play it, see that they like it. It's like, but again, she wasn't asking about what your favorite game is. It's the one that you played the most.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that everyone that, you know, the 62% that chose baseball only play baseball.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
now, for myself, I'm probably hockey I play the most because it is my favorite sport and I have the most history with it. But baseball is right behind it, and it's for all the reasons that all these people listed today. The ease of play, the amount of games there are, you don't have to worry about the timing. It's just easy to play. There's a ton of stats available. And, you know, when we grew up watching baseball, I grew up playing baseball. I was a semi-decent baseball player back when I was younger, and so I can relate to all that. So baseball's high up there on the list for me, but I just play more hockey because it's my sport, and I just enjoy playing that more. But yeah, no, there was some fantastic response here. Now, getting back to basketball 1 second, I kind of wanted to turn that back to basketball. I think Play does a really good job with their basketball game.
With the highlight maker hoops.
Yeah, I don't have it yet, but that's on my list of games to get at some point, or at least try out at some point. And what they've kind of done is they've almost made that like a shootout hockey or a stone cold hockey or basketball, where it's you play a chunk of minutes and you find out who the matchups are, and you kind of go on this little board game track, and then when you get to a certain point, you stop. That's the end of the quarter, and wherever you are, you look at this chart, and that tells you the score of the quarter. So you're not going shot by shot, pass by pass, or basket by basket. And that's I think the issue with basketball. Is that, again, if you got a game that's 120 to 118, you know, that's at least, you know, okay, that's 60 shots on one team. And how many have they missed? Maybe 30 of those shots. So they're going to take 90 shots. That's one team. That's a lot of possessions. It's a lot of dice rolls. It's a lot of things, a lot of things happening that you got to try to manufacture or create on the tabletop or on the PC. So that's, for me, that's where basketball comes in. It's just like, holy cow, if I'm rolling every shot, you know, you're going to be rolling 300 or 400 times in a game.
Kind of dovetails to what I was thinking of as you were going through that, is that there are some sports that are tremendously easier to play on the PC, football and basketball. You know, basketball, strat basketball, which I love. It's my favorite of the four strat games. That would be an absolute bear to play on the tabletop because, again, you got to keep track of the timing. You got to keep track, even if you're not doing full stat keeping, you got to keep track of who's got fouls. And because of the rules of basketball, you get foul shots after 5 fouls on a non-shooting thing. So there's just a lot to keep track of. The dice rolling on the computer, even if it's all done behind the scenes and presented to you, is all done. So you're not sitting there and putting dice, you know, down the dice tower. I mean, there are, in an 80s NBA game, you got 200 shot attempts. And that doesn't include any free throws.
Now, regular season basketball does a decent job of kind of speeding it up, too, because you're playing in 3-minute segments.
3-minute chunks, yeah.
So you roll the dice, you see how many points there are in the basic game. Then if you want to play the advanced game with all the stats. Now you played that the other day. Well, how long did that take you to do that with all the stats?
I think if I actually sat there and played it on a semi-regular basis, it's probably going to be an hour and 15. Just got to type it all in there. But you do... It's 4d6. You get 2 for one team and 2 for the other. And so, again, it doesn't – what takes the extra time is you resolve how many points there are, and then you just read the line. And so, again, it's all the stat keeping is what makes it – it does well. I think it's what APA should have done for basketball. It makes you feel like you've watched a game on television, but that's because it's me and I have to type everything in. And
but it's still, you get
an hour and 15.
Yeah, so you roll the dice, you get a 6 and a 3, so that's 9 points. So you go and you look at the line, which is either 36 or 63, and then it tells you who got those points and rebounds and the whole bit, and then you do the same for the other team. So a lot of it's just logging in the stats, but you're not taking the shot by shot or the pass by pass.
You're not taking the shot by shot. It does a good job in keeping your interest. I mean, we're going to have Anthony on at some point when your schedule eases up for Glory Days football, which we both need to try out. But is that the game that kind of puts or that type of hybrid game where you can go drive by drive or play by play or a mix of both, is that the game that kind of breaks football over? Because I think, again, one of the things that you talked about, you run a play. Pick on strat football for a second. You roll all the dice, you resolve the play, you know that you've got a penalty roll coming up. But if you manually play all that out, okay, Tony Dorsett has a 3-yard run. Okay, and then, however, it was a holding penalty against Dallas. None of that matters. And so you've taken the 2 minutes to do that, to resolve all that, and then, nope, it's not 2nd and 7, it's 1st and 20.
Yes, all that for nothing with a football game. Yeah.
So again, wasted motion in a game. Be curious, and I might do this on their thing, for people who primarily play on the computer, what would be your number one sport? Because just like the baseball is radio's best friend, it is so much easier to listen. Not that there aren't good football announcers. I would gladly spend an evening with Kevin Harlan listening to him call a football game. Or basketball is actually not a bad radio sport, but nothing like baseball, which is just such the opposite on television. For people who are primarily computer players, what is your number one sport to play?
That's a good point, because the basketball, football, and hockey games, which is kind of what we're talking right now, kind of comparing that to baseball.
Right.
The computer does a lot of the heavy lifting on that.
Absolutely.
It really does. So you can when I play Inside Blitz on the computer, which I really enjoy playing that on the computer from Inside Sports, I can bang out a game of that in 15, 20 minutes. Just kind of letting the computer handle everything, and me clicking on this and clicking on that and seeing the result of the play. I really can bang out a game pretty quick in that. Maybe not 20 minutes. Maybe it's closer to a half hour. But it's not the 1 or 2 or 2.5 hour tabletop experience. That's for sure. So the computer definitely speeds that up. 2nd and 10, the same thing. Action PC football, Pro Strategy football, all those games there. Football Mogul. Football Mogul is probably the quickest game. You just pick the play, click, and it gives you the results. And I can play a game of Football Mogul in 10 to 15 minutes.
Right.
And that's the fun about that. Sometimes I'll just bang out a couple of games because it's so fast. Pick the play and good. There you go.
But one of the things that has kind of come up the last few shows that we've done, and the people in the comments and such, is that people's patience or ability to play a longer play game. This kind of popped up when we did the end of the last show of 2023.
Yeah, you're right.
What was that people want to play shorter games in which the full play football, basketball, hockey, soccer, golf don't lend themselves to be that way. I mean, people really have a crunch for time and to try to tap that market. Now, again, nothing wrong with whatever sport that it is that you play. I mean, we're not trying to say that it's wrong that people do that with baseball, but it does kind of give you pause for game designers to go, how can I do that and get what I want out of it if I know that people really don't want to play anything longer than a half hour?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're seeing that a lot of people are enjoying the quicker games. And so it's nice. I think there are some people that are making the quicker games. The pocket pennant run, I think, is a little bit of a quicker game.
Al Wilson's fast inning, and of course, fast for football.
Yep, he's got some quicker games. Yep, and this game here, the new football game, the Glory Days football.
Glory Days football,
I think you can play that fairly quick as well. So, all good stuff here. So again, the topic today we were talking about.
Thanks, Jan.
Yeah, thanks, Jan, from Sports Sim Magazine. That was the poll they had, is what sport is on your tabletop the most, and baseball won out. So we wanted to talk about that, and we wanted to get your feedback, as we like to do here, because we are a community show, and we got some fantastic feedback today.
Let's finish the plug. If you're not familiar with them, they have a Facebook group, and you can order either a PDF or an actual print magazine, Dave. Imagine that. And you just go to them on Facebook, and there'll be instructions on how to do that if you're not a member of that community already. So Sports Sims Mag, or Sports
Sim Mag. Yep, Sports Sim Magazine. And also, do you know what arrived? Speaking about magazines, do you know what arrived today?
What?
My very first issue of the Hockey News.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. I've been spending the last month just going over all the archives, and I've been enjoying that and soaking that up like a sponge. And the actual first issue arrived today. It's gorgeous. It really it's
I'm sure it is. I mean,
so I haven't flipped through it yet, but yeah, it's arrived.
looking forward to hearing a review on that. So.
Yep. I'll probably spend more time with the old archives because
still, I'm sure
it'd be fun
that
to read the new stuff. And what do you think that the first advertisement on the cover? There's the cover of whoever's on the cover. It says the Hockey News right next to the Hockey News. What do you think?
FanDuel?
It was one of them. Yeah. It was one of the gambling sites. Front page of the Hockey News. Cover right on the cover too. Not even on the inside. Just right on the main page. There's an advertisement there. So that's where we are in 2024. Speaking of Sports Sim Magazine, I owe them an article. So I have the showcase this weekend. So I got, I think, 2 games Friday, 3 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday. So I'm planning on bringing a little laptop that I got, and I'm going to sit in the stands, and I'm going to try to write an article for the next magazine in between games, in between periods and in between games. So I'm going to have a lot of time in my hands in between the games up there, and I'll sit in the stands as long as it's not too cold, and I'll see if I can get an article going for them. And so hope you'll see me back in that magazine again. All righty. So let me see. Oh, let's get to the 3 stars of the week. Okay. Let me see here. So this is episode 213. And
I love LA.
Let me see. We're going to go 4 stars this week, Ron. We're going to do 4 stars this week. Okay. Because we have a couple of people here we want to mention. The number 4 star was going to be Jimmy Batterton.
Yay!
Hope I said that right. Jimmy, thank you so much for supporting the show. You're kind of our bonus 4th star this week. Number 3 is Thomas Gerbasi.
Yay!
Thomas, thank you so much for supporting the show. Our number 2 star, it's one of the new Patreons for us, Dan V.
Yay!
Dan, thank you so much for being one of our new Patreons here on the show. We hope to see you in the Discord. And if you haven't got the link, let me know. But I'm pretty sure I get all the Discord links out to our $5 patrons. And number 1 star this week, Ron, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, another loss in the community, and this one's a big one, especially if you're Strat. I actually knew this guy from when I covered the Washington Nationals. He was part of a couple things from when I was doing them. So Butch Haber is our number 1 star, and Butch, Godspeed to you, and thanks for all your contributions to the community.
Yep, I saw that the other day in the middle of the night. Somebody posted that, and it was sad to see that we lost another member of the community. So anyway, thank you, and he's our number 1 star this week.
Yes.
All righty, so let's wrap things up with episode 213, shall we?
Absolutely.
So you've been listening to the Digital to Dice podcast, episode 213. We talked about why baseball is the most popular game to play for our community, according to the Sports Sim Magazine poll. Ways to get a hold of us: digitaltodice.com is the website, 978-751-DICE is the text line, digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email, and over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And as always, we'd like to know from you, why do you think baseball is still tops on our tabletop? Let us know in the comments below or on Facebook or by email, whatever you want to get a hold of us, and let us know. I think that about wraps it up. Ron, thanks for joining me.
As always.
And what are you going to be playing? Anything good?
I hope so.
Wow. Not where I was going with that, but...
the 88 replay continues. Hopefully that will be good.
Okay.
Is that where you're going with that?
I guess. I mean, anything new you might be playing, trying out, looking into?
Maybe. Don't put me on a spot like this.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye. Good night, LA.